Hello and welcome to Behind the Scenes with New Zealand Response Team 8. That's the team based in Wellington, and they're going to tell us all about how they operate and their wish list for D4H. So let's meet some of the guys. Natalie, I think, is going to come in. Hey,
Hi
Natalie.
there.
You're joining us from
Nice
New
to meet you.
Zealand?
Yes, joining us from Wellington. I think last month you had people from the South Island, but we're from Wellington, which is at the bottom of the North Island of New Zealand, capital city.
Excellent. And Richard as well, right?
Yes, indeed. Morena, good to be here.
Excellent. Thanks, Richard. So Natalie, you're the team leader, and Richard, you're head of personnel.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a couple of team leaders at Wellington Emergency Response Team. Share the load around. We're a volunteer, fully volunteer team, and so leading the team, and also used to be head of personnel, but have passed that mantle on to Richard, who's doing a much better job than me, and he's also a squad leader with the team as well.
Brilliant. So give me that terminology. What's a team leader do then? How does that work?
Well, when you first join the team, or when you first look to join the team, you come along and are a recruit. And then once you've been through various training exercises and 12-hour exercises and things, you might become a full team leader if you're voted into the team. And then just can progress through the ranks to become a senior team member and then potentially a squad leader if you've got those leadership skills. And then we have a couple of people who are the people who the council will call us to deploy. We're part of the civil defence system, volunteers, and so might be called by the emergency controller to deploy. Team leader will do that and will represent the team at various events and just make sure the whole team's running smoothly. And we've got a series of committees to support, so it's not all like one person doing everything. All the team members are assigned to committees with areas of responsibility like equipment or personnel or PR and sponsorship, etc. So operational readiness.
Are all the RTs in New Zealand similar size, or do they vary across the different councils?
Quite varied. So we have there's some quite small teams, some teams that are much bigger. There's also some teams that work quite closely with other teams, and we sometimes do form composite teams when we deploy. So NZRT8 has about, I think, 24 operational team members, and then we've got a whole bunch of recruits at the moment coming through, 10 or maybe 12 recruits coming through. So we've been expanding a little bit recently, and that's a really good size if we want to have the be able to have the shift system and cover things like out of region deployments where people might be away for a week. So we need to have quite a number of team members. The operations guidelines with the national accreditation framework that's recently come in for NZRTs to make sure all the sort of capabilities are standardized and people are qualified to the right standard that tasking agencies can rely on. But the ops guidelines say that we should deploy as a squad, a team of 8 each time we deploy, and then obviously if you have rotations, then you need quite a number more.
Very good. It's a great time, isn't it, having new members in, because you get to rerun all of that basic training that's boring for the people who've been there a while, unless there's new members present.
Yeah, you got it exactly.
It's nice timing. Richard, what do you do as head of personnel?
So as head of personnel, key responsibility is just keeping an eye on the team and thinking about things like recruitment, bringing new people in, supporting them in their pathway through the different stages that Natalie just mentioned. Also thinking about team welfare, how do we support people given the nature of the work that we're involved in, and I guess well-being is a big topic at the moment, I think, just generally globally. So for us as a team, we're very focused on the well-being of our members as well. And just using the likes of D4H around insight and intelligence for us from a people perspective. So, one of the things we will talk about is obviously qualifications and an accreditation. So we liaise very closely with our training committee to understand the gaps that exist from an accreditation point of view and a qualification point of view, and how do we build those quals and that capability over the longer term.
What is the accreditation you're going for?
So the team is already accredited. So the New Zealand response teams have, well, NEMA have, which is the overarching agency, the National Emergency Management Agency, has introduced a accreditation framework for response teams nationally. So the framework has a number of strands. And the response teams, depending on their capability, will look to be accredited in different strands. Say, for example, there's a foundational strand, there's a flood response strand, there's a storm response, mass casualty, there's technical rope strand as well. So there's a few others. So depending on, I guess, the nature of your local sort of incidents, you will tend to find teams will focus on certain strands versus others, but everyone needs to have that foundational strand. Our team went through the accreditation process about a year and a half ago, I think it was, and we've been accredited in 5 of those strands. And what the accreditation framework does is it provides I guess, assurance to other agencies around the capability of the team, and the ability of the team to deploy into certain situations and to be able to be operationally effective in those situations. So from a co-response, multi-agency perspective, it's very useful. So we've got the likes of the fire service FENS, ambulance, who I'm also a volunteer for, police, so they will have a very good understanding of what we're capable of doing given a particular incident, and just kind of enables that interoperability.
Can you talk a little bit about what are you good at doing? What are the skills? What does the response team bring?
Yeah, so response team, we operate across a number of different sort of areas. Within the Wellington area, we're particularly focused on light urban search and rescue. So I guess the big thing we're all preparing for is as a major earthquake. We're a seismically active area, and we have quite a few earthquakes rolling through on an annual basis. So I guess we are preparing for a situation where we do get a decent sized shake coming through, and then we'll be able to respond to that. In addition to that, we train in relation to welfare. So setting up emergency assistance centres, dealing with members of the public in response to an incident. We had one recently where the team was stood up to help out with the emergency assistance centre with a large fire that claimed a number of lives within Wellington. So we assisted with that. We also train in storm response. So Wellington's a fairly not only seismically active area, but also quite dynamic in terms of weather patterns. Windy Wellington is a fairly common term. So we do have quite a few storms coming through here on a regular basis. So we'll have things like, roofs will disappear, trees will come down. So we train to assist with response in those situations. Flooding as well. We had a major.
And so that you're on the ground.
Recently.
I mean, is that swift water rescue? Is that guys in dry suits? Is it debris cleanup? I mean, what are the key skills there? Is it rescue of people or the
so we're not so much in the rescue side of things. We're assisting first emergency services in relation to that. We do have teams that do have swift water capability, so it's not a strand that our team has been accredited in. They will be involved in rescue, and so it would be more supporting the rescue operation.
Natalie, what are we looking at in the photos here on screen? This is the team?
Yeah, that is the team. And so as Richard said, last year we went through the accreditation process, and because this is a new accreditation process, there was previously, I don't know, a decade or maybe even 20 years ago, there was a different kind of orange card process, which was much more focused on search and rescue or ground-based rescue, and now the accreditation process is much stronger, and the National Emergency Management Agency needed someone to go first. So we went through the process first to sort of test the process and get accredited. And so we put together our portfolio of evidence and went through all the sort of practical demonstrations of our capabilities. So that those photos, the bottom one is one of the places where we were doing a roof kit for a storm response in the accreditation demonstration of capabilities, and the top one, which I wasn't in, is the at Parliament, where the Minister for Civil Defence and Emergency Management presented the team with the first accreditation certificate.
Very good.
So
well,
yeah,
what did you say is happening on the bottom? It's a roof. What was it? A roof collapse?
Oh, this was just after we'd basically simulated a storm response where we'd had to go in and do debris removal from that home.
Very
and
good.
Also gone on the roof and practiced mending the roof, or demonstrated that we could. So.
And you were talking about that's a squad of 8 will go out and do that work. Is that what I heard?
I mean, it completely depends on the tasking, and we, interestingly, the ops guidelines sort of say certain things, and then once you sort of have them for real, you need different things. So some tasks will need more people, some tasks will need fewer, and obviously it's partly about safety and partly about efficiency and effectiveness. But yeah, the sort of standard minimum squad to deploy would be 8, but if the needs are to have more, then you have more.
And my impression, I guess, both from the news, but also talking to D4H users over there, is that the last 6 months are sort of the busiest 6 months in New Zealand's sort of response team history. I don't know if that's fair, but it sounds like it from over here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have the data to say it's specifically the busiest, but certainly it's been the busiest since I've been around.
It's in the news here. It's been in the news here more than ever before.
Yeah.
It's disaster after disaster, and they seem to be overlapping.
Yeah. So we I think the key thing here is as well as teams responding in their local communities, which is what we're here for and what we primarily do. This year we've also a lot of teams have, we've deployed out of our own region. So previously for our team, when we deployed out of region, it was to support the Christchurch earthquakes, more than a decade ago, and support Pigeon Valley fires with a composite team, but not a lot of out of region deployments. And then this year so far, both Richard and I and another squad have deployed out of region. So Richard can tell us about that.
So I was acting team leader for the deployment in response to the Cyclone Gabrielle event, which was I think it's the costliest storm on record in the Southern Hemisphere. It's estimated about $8.5 billion US dollars damage. There were 8 fatalities in the New Zealand area, and just significant damage. Hard to kind of convey. We were deployed. We were flown into a isolated community. We were there about 2 weeks after the actual event. It was still cut off. We were assisting with a bridge operation, so their bridge had been washed out. And we had a setup where we had IRBs used to traverse the river and assisting with goods and personnel, getting across the river. Also,
what's
welfare,
an IRB?
Hilo Ops, IRB. So a inflatable boat. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, also helicopter operations as well. And just anything that the community needed a hand with, to be honest. We were quite, I was quite impressed that the community was very, very self-sufficient. The community we were with were in quite good shape. Their biggest challenge was it's a very rural community, so livestock issues were coming to the fore. And we were also co-deployed with NZRT-8, so the Defence Force, the Army specifically, and also police on occasion would be assisting us as well. So yeah, it was quite a. We were there. We were there for 5 days. So we 1 day travel either side. Rotated in. There was a team in there before us, and assisted the local community as best as we could. Yeah.
Excellent.
So If I may, I'll just add something there. So yes, Richard's team were deployed, took a team. We'd previously sent, my team was up in Auckland for the Auckland floods. And so between the Auckland floods and Cyclone Gabrielle, so between the 27th of January and the 11th of March, there were 190 response team volunteers that were deployed, many of them out of region, and 1,290 days of volunteer work during a state of national emergency. So yeah, it certainly turned into a big thing. So
Yeah,
really
brilliant.
pleased to be able to support.
New Zealand seems to do a great job of resilient communities. I don't know if you feel that when you're there, but from internationally looking, I think you do a great job of communicating to people that they need to be resilient because help won't get there in some cases. And we kind of see that elsewhere where they're trying to push communities to do that, and they're only starting now. Everyone's sort of leaning on the emergency services. And disasters are just increasing, and they're realizing that that's not going to be good for the future. Excellent. Okay. Well, this is interesting stuff. Let's see if we can go on to the next
Shall we talk features?
slide. Yeah, I think we've talked through a lot of this at this point. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add here.
No, well, just to say that these capabilities and competencies for the different strands, they've all got qualification requirements associated with them. And then there's also requirements for the team leads and the medics and the drivers and the specialists. And so in the old days, we had one mega spreadsheet that was sort of keeping track of things. And a lot of it was about us as team leaders knowing the competencies of our team, like just kind of knowing it.
Yeah.
But now we also have to evidence it a lot more with qualifications that are offered through the National Qualifications Authority, and assessed that way rather than just us watching people demonstrate their skills in training. So that's why we need to sort of be
I know what you're leading up to here. We need more qualification features. That's the next thing coming out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Subtle as a brick, me.
Talk to me. Yeah, talk to me.
Well, all right. So equivalency of qualifications. Richard's a good example of this one. So first of all, in the national accreditation framework, there are some cases where you can have this qualification or this qualification. So one-to-one, this is fine or this is fine. Sometimes you can have this qualification A and B or qualification X. And at the moment, I sort of put them all in there, and then I have to sort of like apply brain to figure out, oh no, this person's okay to not have that because they've got that. For some of them, we've tried putting them in as one qualification that applies to this or this, but that means that the auditability is not so good of that. And then the other situation is where you've got prior learning or skills acquired elsewhere. For example, Richard and his ambulance skills, where he doesn't need to have the sort of basic first aid that ordinary people do in their ordinary lives. He trains to a much higher level, but it still shows in D4H that he's missing these sort of fundamental qualifications. So we need to be able to mark that off as not required due to, equivalency for another reason.
So I think the solution to this one, and I think you said it in your notes to us, was you've heard this before that we've said there's lots of demand on this, and there really is on that when you're setting up a group expectation, the ability to say effectively this one or this one or this one, or this and this one and this one, so that there's a ability to build something a little more custom.
Exactly. So it's, I guess, kind of in my head overrides. So you're like, the standard is this, these are all required, but we can have these overrides that basically turn off your requirement to have that thing. We could do it at a sort of, the standard for the group is all of these. I mean, I think there's two, like I say, I think there's two different things here. One is the logic you can apply within the qualifications that exist. So as I say, if you've got this plus this, you don't need this. If you've got this, you don't need these other two. So that's sort of logic that you can apply based on, and we can apply based on people's records of achievement. And tick, 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 don't need this. And then the other situation is us recording that a person has something that effectively relieves them of the requirement to have something, which is on an individual basis rather than a same logic for everyone type basis. So if either of those things were possible, great. I think the removal of the requirement to have it due to people's, what do they call it? Apple, prior learning or whatever, is possibly, I mean, it'd be great, but in my head, it's harder for you to do. I don't know, maybe it's not. But even just the, if you have this plus this, you don't need this. That would be perfect.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I don't have an answer on a date on this one, but we do hear the demand for it. What we'll get is we might get I don't know if you've spoken to GP before, but GP might be able to get some dates on all these pieces for you and come back to you during the
Great.
week with, what we know about them, whether we've the roadmap for 2023 sort of largely defined. There's still little bits of space in it, but it's largely defined at this point. Or I can tell you if that's going to fit in this year or not.
Great, because I remember you saying previously about the demand that's out there. So yeah, at the moment we just have to do it offline and add our own logic sort of separately. So it'd be great to have it.
No, I know there's demand. There's been lots of requests for it, and actually, an example of something that wasn't on the roadmap that went through only today. We released the more complex repeating off-call schedules. That's, you can see it on updates.d4h.com for anyone watching, and that's a good example. That's been there for a long time, like 2017 or something. That started getting a bit of momentum, and we were able to fit it in due to the demand.
Great.
So, but you never know. You never know. Okay, what's this? Gap analysis across the team for multiple strands. Describe this to me.
Yeah, so basically, as I say, we've got our I think we've changed the slide order. That's right. So we've got our requirements for each group. So we've got a strand as a group in D4H, and then we basically have two things that I need to be thinking about behind the scenes. So one thing is, have I got all the right people in the right groups? So and I guess if I speak to the second bullet point first, we've got a bunch of new recruits in. I don't want to add them into the light rescue strand yet, because I know they're not operationally ready, but there's not a place I can see going, what do they need to be operationally ready? So I kind of need to add them into the strand to see what they need to be part of it, or add them into the group to see what they need in order to be part of the group. But as soon as I add them into the group, then suddenly it looks like I've got an extra 10 people in that group, and they also get whatever communications we're sending, etc. So it's almost like I need a kind of shadow group for those people. As a duplicate copy of, these are the people that are working towards becoming operational in that strand, so I can see their gaps, their qualifications that are needed in order to enter that group, if you know what I mean. Or,
yes. Do you have when you're setting up the expectations, do you have a status called preferred? So there's required, do you have preferred?
Yep.
Oh, you do have that. Does
So
that
I
work,
guess,
that you make it preferred training for trainees or anything?
yeah, so I can do that, where I put people into the trainee group, and then I can make them preferred for every single qualification that exists, or that's required for any strand. But then I can't kind of go, oh, these people are ready for light rescue, but not ready for civil defence and welfare, because it's all just lumped into one big pile. So if I make them preferred at a recruit general level, then I still can't see that they're ready to move. But yeah, that is what we do at the moment, is keep them out of those groups until they become operational. But it's just a process.
How do you feel this gap analysis looks like? What does it?
It's a massive matrix. So I know that you've got a group's qualification export, where you can see the matrix of just the qualifications that are required for that group and all the people that are in it. But what I can't see is who's not in that group, like the negative space, and how they fit. And so maybe one way that might be as easy is to be able to do that export and be able to say, actually include everyone, even if they're not in the group, but have some way of us being able to filter them. Then still we'd need to do that 7 times for the different groups. And so it'd be great to have some sort of mega matrix where I can see, basically, Richard's got all of these qualifications for these strands, and somehow be able to do that.
So there is a matrix qualification of all of the qualifications versus all of the members. Does that answer it? No, you want the groups?
No, because I need to know which ones they actually need, for the groups, for the framework. Because we were using this well before the framework was introduced. So we've got qualifications in there, and there's also qualifications that are useful but aren't mandatory in the framework. But we decide that we want our people to have these, and so I want to have them in the system.
What would be really useful if you've got a sample matrix, just so we can understand what the rows and columns are on that, because it sounds like
Yeah.
Richard would appear multiple times, right, in each group, from what you're describing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So
we could do it that way, or we could do it that he just appears once, but there's a way of indicating that these are the groups, that there's qualifications for this group.
Okay. If you send us on a template of what you think that should be, just like 3 members, sample 3 members kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at it and try and answer it a little bit more. Because I'm still trying to figure that one out in my head.
And I guess it wasn't such a big deal for our first accreditation, because we sort of had one batch of people that were all kind of, pretty much operational. We had a couple of other people that were not, but it was very clear. But now that we've got cohorts coming through, keeping track of those is a bit harder, but it's also brilliant to have the cohorts going through.
That makes sense. We've talked about this one. Okay.
Oh my goodness. So this one, this dates thing, it does my head in, and I feel like it's probably going to take a developer not very long to fix. So when you're inputting the qualifications, especially if you've got people who have just joined the team and they're coming with their record of achievement, and maybe they've come from another team or another life space where they have a lot of the qualifications we need, and I've got to do the data entry. So I start typing in the qualification, and then I need to say when they've got it, and I literally have to click in and do the mouse and click in and go, okay, this was the month, this was the year, and this was the day they got that qualification.
Yes, gotcha.
And then sometimes you get 2 qualifications that you get on the same day, like 6401 and 6402 are both first aid. You probably do a course that does that, and 6403. So I've got to do all of those mouse clicks every time for every qualification. And so I just want to be able to type it in, and type it in is great. And ideally I'd be able to like copy paste and go down. Like yesterday I was doing some for people that did a course a wee while ago, and actually the easiest way for those people was for me to do a group, qualify them all at once, and then delete the group. Do an event, exercise.
So,
which was a very hacky, and it's just, if we can upload,
so
great. But
you created an attendance list, is that what you mean?
Yeah, effectively I did create an attendance list as a workaround to just be able to
qualify them all on the same day,
people at once.
Okay.
But that's a total workaround, and more often than not, it's a number of different qualifications for one individual rather than a number of individuals for one qualification on the same day, unless we've organized the training, in which case we can use the functionality you've already got already. That's excellent, which is your attendance list, and click qualify for those people.
Gotcha. So I'm just having a look here. So if I go to a member's profile and I update their qualifications, it's not pulling any dates through if there's multiple. But I understand the typing would be useful as well. Let me just see what happens here if we go. Yeah, okay. So each one is today. It defaults today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And you can do a bulk upload as well. I know it doesn't sound like the solution there, but you can do it. Not
for
on
one
member,
individual.
It's on the other way. Yeah.
Exactly. And so so it's really good to be able to come at it from different angles, because sometimes you've got
absolutely.
A qualification with a lot of people that have done it possibly at the same time. Sometimes you've got a person that's coming in that we need to record all the things that they've done.
Yep, perfect. Makes complete sense. Okay, export. Oh, there's a comment in here. This is David and York Rescue Boat. So an under training group for each strand, which is I think what you said. You sounded like you're doing.
Yeah, so it just means we have to have effectively a shadow group for each strand, which is more maintenance to try and figure out, is this member in this strand but not that strand? They need to be in, keep track that they're not in more than one, all those things. But
Thanks,
exactly.
David.
That's the excellent workaround, David.
Qualification export.
Yeah, so I think
just to hand them to the teams.
Yeah, well, one is for us to check we've got our own configuration set up, right? Because it's easier to just like download an eyeball than it is to click into each thing. And then the other thing is, if we can do that, it's quite good if other teams can therefore leverage off the data entry work that we've done.
Interesting.
And so that would be cool. But yeah, I think, as I say, even just each team being able to eyeball how their setup is, and make sure that it's correct. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. There is the option if you've multiple teams under a parent organization, the parent organization can configure the qualifications for all of the teams, so they're all matching, and then they can look at them on a team level rather than on individuals level. So team A has certain percent qualified, team B is a certain percent. It's a little bit different than you're describing. That's normally where we see multiple teams with identical qualification sets. But I like that idea. So the ability to export a configuration and give it to somebody else who could import it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Cool.
Yeah, and I guess like that whole thing of having a same owner, that works really well when it's one organisation that's nationwide. But because all of these NZRTs, we have one framework we're all working to, but we're all owned by different bits of local government or NGOs. We're not all owned by the same people.
No, it makes sense. Usability improvements. Yes.
Yeah.
I know that one.
And Richard's a really good example because we've got 2 Richards in our team. So if I just type Richard, first I see one of the Richards, all of their attachments with their various documents that they've got attached that we've put the name Richard in. Then I see like the various patches and other things they've been assigned from their equipment. So I think I have 11 documents to go through, and then 4 maybe equipments before I get to either of the humans.
The profile.
And I'm like, that's the one I wanted.
it may not be what you want to do, but the workaround on that is you can disable all the attachments in the search index. It's possible to take items out of search, which can make it easier to use, but it means you can't search for them. So
that makes it easier for me to use, but then it makes it hard for equipment to use because I've just taken all their stuff out of the search index.
So we've talked about this. We've also talked about lots of search improvements. We did some work on performance on it last year, but we didn't add any functionality to it. So I think I agree with you again. Yeah, I think it's a great feature.
Reprioritize all the developers.
Ability to see history of a person's role or rank in the team.
Yeah. So this is one where especially, like it's basically, we've just had our 30th anniversary as a team. I mean, it's changed name and changed a few things about it over time. But we're sort of really realizing how good it is to be able to, how good it would be, that's currently via a sort of separate manual list, to be able to look back and go, hey, these people were members for these dates, which you can do in D4H because you've got your start date and your retired date. But also these people were, team lead for this date. This person became a squad leader then. This person went on long-term leave for a whole year for this period and then came back. And so just to be able to effectively do the kind of Gantt chart of how the teams looked over time. Because at the moment we just put comments in the text section against someone's, one of the text boxes against someone's record, which isn't very reportable in any way.
And so that I mean, I think the rank is our position field, if it's what I'm thinking, is free text. So it's not like you're selecting a position from that list, but would it be okay that you just say change from effectively today or a selected date, and we save the last value that was in that field? Is that all this is?
That'd be brilliant. Yep.
Is that simple? It's free text. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice one. Yeah. Leave tracking. Is that?
Oh wait, sorry. If I go back to the last one, maybe not today, but maybe us be able to set a date because we don't always do the admin on the exact day.
Of course. Yeah. So default, it would say change. I know exactly what you're thinking. Yeah, perfect. Leave tracking.
Yeah, so this is the difference between kind of off call, and I guess this is something we might talk about in the next slide as well, about the reason for absence. So sometimes we have people who are like, we've got a bunch of engineers in the team, they might be sent to Fiji for 6 months to build bridges, and so they're kind of long-term leave, so we want to sort of take them out and they become non-operational for a period, and that's fine, and off call and all those things. And then sometimes there's people who are just taking leave for a few weeks. I mean, we've got our guy Paul, who's becoming our D4H guru, who's on leave just now for a month, and yeah, just being able to keep track of that and look back and be able to see, okay, this person's actually been on leave for X months of the last 2 years.
So
that kind of
it
thing.
sounds like it's the same as the position field. It's their member status when it changed. That's what I hear there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard that one before. Sounds useful, definitely. Ability to see reason for absence. Yeah. And this is on an activity.
Yeah, exactly. This is on an activity. So everyone's getting so good now. It used to be that no one would say in advance on D4H. They might put a message in another way or send an email saying they were apologies, but now people are putting it in D4H. But we can't sort of, it's this binary thing of you attended or you didn't attend, and you can take people out from having been required to attend, but there's no way of saying they didn't attend, but it was excused versus they didn't attend just because they didn't turn up. And the reason why we don't want to take people off the attendance list if they're excused, is because we do want to show that they weren't there. If they've got to attend 80% of their trainings over a certain period, we need to be able to report on that. And we can't do it by all exercises, because we also have exercises in there for external courses that are offered or other types of exercises. But the Monday night training, we want to be able to see their, report on their percentage attendance, and yeah, sometimes it is justified. They're on shift with the ambulance; they can't come.
So what we're thinking on that one is we also need to split at the moment the attending or absent option on it. It's whether there's only one value for that, which is either the team member says in the future, I'm going to be there, and then the admin or the editor comes in afterwards and they're moving the same thing. We want to separate that so you can see what they said and then what you want to save it as.
What they did.
Excellent. Yeah, so they're separate, right? So we want to break that up. And that sounds like the time to put a comment in at the same time, something like that. So, yep, understood. And I think that's very much on the direction and line we're thinking of going. What was the other piece on that? There was something around, because we're also going to link that into through incident management as check-in and check-out times on an activity. So relevant to what you say you're going to do, you can also check in and check out at a scene or a training exercise. Because there's been lots of requests around, can we put print a QR code off that people can scan, just check in, or, like lots of stuff like that. We've a couple of teams with like 300 members, which is an entirely different operation. I don't know how 300 people all train on the same night, but they do. It's a lot of the Icelandic guys have large teams. And we get that question quite a lot is can we just put something like a QR code up as people come in the door, they scan it with the app or something just to prove they were there. I don't know. Like
exactly.
This ability to move documents. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So one thing I should say is that I think you put it in the ad, but we're very much talking about personnel and training here because we're not yet using incident management. I know some other teams around the country are, and I saw NZRT4 using it up in the Auckland floods and stuff, which is great. But for the moment, we're just using the kind of basic incident or exercise or event type.
All the pre-planning stuff for sure. And that's kind of the admin records management side of it. Incident management, for people who don't know, is like a real-time collaboration tool. So quite different. It's normally used by people managing an incident rather than people responding to an incident, would be the way I describe it. But lots of people will be users of, so maybe collecting up damage assessments into a central area or filling in the SIMS forms, that kind of stuff. Ability to move documents. I'm going to list this as a bug. I don't think this is feature request. I tested this and you should be able to move it, and it doesn't let you find the qualification award when you're searching. You can move it to anything else, but not a qualification award. So,
okay. Cool.
So I think that's a bug,
done.
and we'll just get it fixed.
Thanks.
Ability to collect other data when doing availability checks. Okay, you'll have to talk me through this one.
Yeah, so I guess it's sort of like the form or QR code thing that you were talking about first, and that was mentioned in a previous webinar, but not quite the same thing. So, when we've got upcoming exercises or whatever, we just use the personnel app, and you say you're coming or you're not coming. But then when we have an actual call out, sometimes it's a thing where it's local. Sometimes it's a bigger thing, like when we're doing these out of region deployments. And so we almost always have to ask other things other than just, are you available? So we currently send out a Google form, basically, where people are saying if they're available, but also if they need transport, if they're only available between these hours and not after that. We also, it's not such a big deal now, but for quite a few years there, it was like, have you done your COVID test today before you deploy? And you had to confirm. So these kinds of things. And so at the moment, that's completely decoupled, us checking people's, doing the availability checks. It's completely decoupled those forms from D4H.
How do you send the message at the moment? How do you send that form or
we
link or question?
we now spam people. It used to be via email with a text message to say check your email. Now it's just as equally often via social media messaging as well in parallel, and it's basically just get the link out to people, and some people respond best to different communication means.
And so that's to your 20 or 30 people that you're saying? Is it like on WhatsApp or something, or how do you just put in a group? How do you go about it?
We have a messenger group, but also sometimes when we deployed, we also sometimes use WhatsApp. And then, as I say, we've got our email addresses, the group email addresses. We tend to use that more than the communications within D4H, partly because everyone's got other lives and they're more likely to be on their email than logged into D4H at that exact moment. But also because when you like, we really like having the mailing list, that when you apply, it goes back to the mailing list, and then when you apply again, it goes back to the mailing list. And if someone's joined the mailing list in that time, they'll get the new thing, rather than if it's come out via D4H, where it's just gone to a list of individuals that will stay the same list of individuals. Should put that on the
we've actually even
request,
dropped
actually.
on the email. We don't even do CC, and we used to send. You used to be able to send an email and it would CC everyone who you selected in the group. All emails now just go to one person at a time, so everyone gets the same message, but they're individually delivered. And that's a spam deliverability issue we were hitting, where if you CC 50 people, and one person presses spam or block, our reputation drops, and it's very hard to control what people were doing with that. So we had to do that. So to avoid the reply alls. Yep, I know, I understand that. And I would say that we've got it in Q4. You can expect around November, December us to start talking about it a little bit. We're going to be doing some stuff around better communications to people, I would say. So I won't give too much away now, but it'll be easier to send messages to groups of people like that. There's also a feature coming in, incident management, which is kind of what that sounds like to me. A deployment like that is you're collaborating about an incident. That's going to allow you to send a link like a Google form, and all the responses will go into the incident effectively as paperwork, which you can export as a spreadsheet or manage in there. So there's lots of stuff coming around that.
Great. So we should start looking into that more then. Perfect.
Okay, Nick, plans to include continual professional development tracking under qualifications. Oh, let me think. We get a lot of requests around this. People want to log time themselves without it going through sort of an editor effectively. So it's not an official team qualification. It's like a personal logbook. Would that be a good description of that? What can I describe on that? We get the same with equipment, where people want to just log outside of it, activity usage of equipment too. I guess I would say there are plans, but there's no definite spec on this yet. But there are plans in some form in the next number of years, probably, to add some form of logbook feature. But we're not quite sure how it's going to work yet. And that sounds like what that's like to me. We get a lot from canine teams who they all go out as individuals to train their dog. And so they want to just come back and add some hours themselves. It's not like an event that other people were at. So we do hear this again and again. So stay tuned, but it's not this year that we're adding that. Okay, let's keep going.
So many features. I feel like
No,
last
we're
time we
good.
did a feature conversation, there were heaps of different people with different chipping in. But
No, this is all great. Okay,
yeah,
audit trail showing what was changed from, to, and by
easy.
whom.
So especially with the activities, you can see that someone changed something. Someone
Mhm.
made a change at this time, but you can't see what was changed and whether that person had changed something about a property of the activity itself or the description or added some documents, or whether they changed the attendance of someone. And when there was only one or maybe two of us doing D4H data entry and admin and stuff, that was fine because you always knew it was you. Or knew what you did. But now we've had a couple of situations as we've tried to share the load around more people in the team, where you're like, oh, I'm not sure who made that change, and or how that got changed. And so it would just be really good to be able to see who, how changes were made, not just that someone made a change, but exactly what they did.
We do have a feature on the professional accounts called Revision Audit, which shows that. And I've just switched it on. I think it's mainly on incidents, but if you next time you try edit an incident, go to the bottom and press view audit history and see if that's what you're talking about. But I just turned it on in your account.
Okay, cool.
But I don't. It's not on
Thanks.
I don't think it's on everything, but it's definitely on incidents. In the incident reports there. Yeah. So see if that helps, and then that's the kind of thing we'd expand wider.
Yeah, great, because it's one of those things that you don't need most of the time. And then every so often you're just like, oh, I need to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, most of the time it's completely invisible and not required.
We do. I mean, the audit trail, I'm trying to think what you think. I'm just going to click into like a qualification on my screen. If I press show audit. Yeah. Yeah. So it just says details are updated. It doesn't tell you which detail was changed. You can see every change, or you can see every person who changed something, but not the exact value change. But that revision audit does it tells you a little bit more. So I'd be interested to see if that matches what you needed.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Unified accounts to log in across all the different geographic data centers. So no, they won't do this. So particularly, so the different regions are purely for data protection. So there's nothing to do with performance. We can push the service out, no problem, to anywhere high performance. It's down to where data is stored, and so they're completely independent. There's no crossover at all. So if you're on the US region data center, it knows nothing about you anywhere else in the world, and that's just data privacy rules and what's required by most people. So the unified accounts will be within a region.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. And for those that are listening and don't know what we're talking about, basically there's all these different data centers, and different organizations have their information on these different data centers. And so in our circumstance, we're in the Asia Pacific data center, which I think was relatively new-ish when we joined it. Helped out some of the troubleshooting with time zones. But we do have people who have already been involved with, like, for example, land search and rescue, and had to do heaps of troubleshooting with them for their logins.
We prefer the land search and rescue to move to the AP, to the Asia Pacific data center, because it's a better outcome for everyone. So we launched the Sydney data center, which is Asia Pacific for us, which is the Amazon Web Services data center in Sydney. Probably right about 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm not quite sure, but it relatively recently. And anyone who signed up before that was on our global one, which so we can move people. There's a very small fee. I think it's a half day for us to do the work to move somebody. and we can move them. And then there's no change in price to the annual fee. It's just there's a small once-off fee to get moved. So that's what we prefer, is to put everyone into the correct region.
So for all those other agencies, it's worth paying the fee, because then your people will get less confused when they're trying to log in across their different organisations.
Well,
they're affiliated with.
normally what happens is they go through some sort of information security audit just on a rotating basis, and the question comes back to us: where is this data exactly? And we'll check your service agreement, as you know, we can move you to wherever you'd like. So that's kind of, we see this quite regularly, and we're moving people all the time, so no problem.
Great.
Staging test environment. So another thing you guys probably wouldn't be aware of, all of our professional accounts effectively have what we call a cloud plan, and the cloud plans are like all the kind of premium support and other security features and things like that they pay for on top of the service. That comes with a separate staging environment that they get access to.
Okay.
So that's why the volunteer pricing teams don't come with that. The thing to do on this is talk to GP when he reaches out to you and see if he can get you access to something to test in. I think is the best thing on that.
Yeah, cool. Because I think that we've with the qualifications and the personnel side of things, I think we're pretty au fait with it. But I know certainly our equipment team and some of their imports, they're doing mega changes, and just want to make sure it's right before you do it.
100%.
And also when we've had new people coming along and we're trying to teach them how to use it, and so it's not just about data imports, it's also just general how to use, and so that's quite useful as well. But I think we've come to the end of our list, which is amazing because we've still got some time left. But I just want to say thank you very much. I know here I feel like I'm just going, what about this and what about this and what about this? But what we haven't sort of represented enough in this webinar is just how much it has helped us. And as I say, it was really, really essential to get the good, shareable, reportable data, both to help with our accreditation and also for us to be able to see who we can deploy to what thing without having to rely on team leaders' memories of capabilities. We can just run that report, and super useful when Cyclone Gabrielle came on, Auckland floods came along, and we could just go, no, look, we know what we're doing, we know who can go, we know who's up to scratch, and we know what people's capabilities are in a really good, reportable, secure kind of manner. So thank you.
Excellent. No problem. And I'd encourage as well that if you've anybody technical on the team, we've an API that they can work with. There's a lot of
I've been working with it.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Well then,
thanks, integrating.
Tell GP you need a test account for that. That's the best way. So anyone who's building anything with the API or anything they can share with other people built with the API that does any specialist functions, because we often see there's some quite specialist needs people have, and it's hard for us to enable everything, but a lot of people have built those add-ons using the API. So all sorts of things happening with it, people connecting up CAD systems and bulk change systems, and we've some teams who've built their own app, but all the data gets pushed back into D4H. So there's loads of stuff like that going on. That's kind of exciting. Well, this is fantastic. Richard, anything else you'd like to add? I know myself and Natalie have taken over the conversation a little.
Yeah, no, not all. You can see Natalie is very much our D4H expert. So great to hear the conversation this morning, and thanks for the opportunity.
Perfect. This has been great, and I'm really glad to hear that it helps you do your job and that you're utilizing it. Is it all right that anyone else, any of the other response teams thinking about D4H, reach out to you and ask any questions?
Sure, absolutely. I think we're already in touch with several of them, but I'm always happy to speak to more. NZRT is a brilliant asset, so thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. I see another question come in there, Amy. Amy's behind the scenes running this. I should have given her a shout out at the start. She's doing a great job. So these questions we're seeing, they're coming in over across LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, I think anywhere that you can watch this live stream. This looks like someone in New Zealand. Is there a community page to discuss and share API builds? No, there isn't. We don't have a single community page to discuss this stuff on. The thing to do is probably, well, through whatever I'd say, we don't host one, but I'm wondering if you were to email into the help desk, if they can point you to some other people who are doing some stuff on that, might be a good route to do it. So what we'd say is, if you start the community page, that'd be great, because community page should be by the community and not by us, I think is what I'd recommend. It'll be a much better community than us going and posting commercial content into it. So great. That's lovely. Thank you, guys. And I hope to see you in New Zealand at some point.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great. See you later.